Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, and we're going to actually take a look at this 61 Lincoln Continental Convertible that just went up on Bring a Trailer. I do want to mention one correction. Thank you so much to the individual who chimed in via YouTube. This totally went over my head. I was kind of away on a long trip the last few days, and for whatever reason, I did not notice that this 63 that I just covered in a recent video, it was bid to $19,250. What that means, and I know what that means, but again, I missed it. The reserve was not met. So my apologies. Bottom line is that car that I recently covered, which is what you see here, did not sell. That reinforces, for those that do not know, you can list or have a reserve on Bring a Trailer, which is fantastic. So thank you so much to the individual that chimed in. This 61 Lincoln Continental Convertible, I'm probably going to move this video up because I've got 3 or 4 in the pipeline already, and I'm probably going to put this one up a little bit sooner than I expected because it's a convertible. There's more folks looking for these because they're a little bit harder to find. But when we dive into this one, you see, of course, that iconic front end. It's one that you either love, and I know a lot of the old timers absolutely love this front end. It reminds them of kind of the Thunderbird. There's that connection between the original Thunderbird design that was brought through to this 61, and it's either like you kind of love it or you hate it. But I think the perception is most people love this year. The 61 was refurbished in 2009. It was acquired by the current seller in 2011, so kind of reinforces it's not just a quick flip, so to speak. They do mention there's a few additions like a CD player and whatnot. This car is currently in Jeffersonville, Vermont, so that would be key if you're looking at purchasing and having to arrange transport. It's got about 1,700 views so far and about 550 watchers. Okay. Now, there's a few things. I think like this car, just to sum it up, is not going to be 100% factory correct. Okay. So someone that's looking for an untouched car that's 60 plus years old, you're not going to find it in this one. But I think what you would find potentially is a good driver, a car that you can get in and really enjoy with your family. They break down the color, basically a white color. The soft top is not a color that you'll typically see because it wasn't available that year, and that's fine, right? And that goes back to my comment about this isn't a factory 100% factory correct car, and you'll also see that with the interior color, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, just knowing that it has been redone. That's key. So like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time reinforcing the things aren't the things that weren't available, but more just upon what we're looking at here. Of course, in 61, 62, and 63, you have a 14-inch steel wheel. They do have the wheel covers, aka hubcaps, which we'll take a look at. They do have the Lincoln Star on them. Again, I think a purist is going to say, hey, the carpet, the interior, it's not all spot on. Some of the stuff potentially has been dyed and whatnot. The good thing about this is it's all there. So you can get in and enjoy this car. And then down the road, if you want to change it, so many people want these black on black cars, this would be potentially a good car to do that. We can see here, it does look like down here on this piece that you'll see, it looks like there's been a few pieces maybe that have been swapped and have been dyed. I know on our recent podcast, when I had Tim Wilson on, we talked about in 61, the little vents that pop down, which they don't show here for the air conditioning. Some of those pieces will tend to break over time. You've got that wood grain, which is so iconic in these earlier year Lincolns, and there's several pieces, including the doors around the 3 pods, and then here, these 2 pieces, and then over on the glove box. What we can see, of course, in the engine bay is a 61 MEL Mercury Edsel Lincoln 430. Okay, so this is the standard engine. We can see it has a single pot reservoir. I've talked about that at links. They keep with that until 67. A lot of folks choose to upgrade that to a dual, and that just kind of gives you that redundancy in the event that the front brakes went out and things like that. we could see that it has the 2-port, not the 3-port fuel pump. However, one thing that they do not mention in here, and it's not a deal breaker, there are folks that will bypass this, okay? And they will run electronic fuel pump in the back, and they'll either have it to a keyed ignition. That's generally what people will do. So when you go to start it, there's no really kind of priming it. It's just immediately you have fuel pressure, and we can tell because these 2 ports are blocked off. Okay, so in this photo, I'm not seeing where the fuel line comes in. I don't know where it's at, but I did do a control F and I didn't see anything mentioning the electronic fuel pump. There's other folks that will do and change out the carburetor for like an EFI system. I don't believe this one has it, but certainly some folks will leave the mechanical fuel pump, like my friend Tom has done, and then they'll have an auxiliary, which they can click a switch. And like if the car sat a week, 2 weeks, a month, you can click the switch and it's going to bring the fuel pressure up. And then the normal mechanical fuel pump will do its job. But with this one and what others have done is they will bypass it. We can see that it has the air conditioning compressor, which again, this is an AC car. And oh, by the way, let's take a look over number one. It's not in the Lincoln registry yet. Again, this is a brand new listing, so it'll get added this week. And then if we look at Haggerty, this is the price evaluation tool that they have. And because I'm a customer of them, paying customer, basically you've got a range of 28,000 up to 130. But oh, by the way, 10% more for a factory AC car. So I think this car is probably going to go, I mean, it really should go up towards the good price, but it'll be interesting to see, with, some folks think there's a flattening market and things like that. We really haven't seen much of that in the Lincoln world, but it'll be interesting to see where this one goes. Of course, they talk about the factory engine here. We see a photo underneath of the rear. The fuel tanks are in a different position in 61. They move in 64, so that is where the fuel tank is factory-wise. Bring a Trailer, again, kudos to them. They do a great job of getting the photos that they need. It's not uncommon for these cars to be resprayed, repainted, if you will, and for someone to paint over the door tag, and that's what's absolutely been done here, as you can see. In these earlier year Lincolns, this was more up by where your left foot is at when you're driving, so in that area of the door jamb. 74A is the 4-door convertible. As I mentioned, it's white, Sultana white. Red leather was 85. I believe they got that correct. They do a good job of verifying all this. June 12th was the build date, so that would have been June 12th of 1961, towards the end of production, it should be. Yeah, so 11,591. Yeah, so that should have been towards the end of production, I believe. Dual range, because I don't think that they started the production that early in 60. I could be incorrect on that, but either way, it was a build date of June 12th. A lot of this I'm just kind of do off the top of my head, so I don't reference any notes, so my apologies. The car does not have a title. This isn't something that's a deal breaker, okay? I learned this years ago buying a 67 from Alabama. Some states did not title vehicles until the 70s or early 80s. So again, that is not a deal breaker. The key thing is you would have a bill of sale and you would want everything to match out, because like in Florida, for instance, if you buy a car that's out of state, they may want to do a VIN verification, right? They may want you to come bring the car there so they can verify that, hey, the bill of sale matches this. And again, it's different for each state. I just want people to know that's not a deal breaker. If we take a look at this video here, the last time it didn't let me play it for some reason on the other video, but this gentleman, you can see he pulls up in the car, and what he does is he does leave the car running. Now, you guys know how I feel if you've watched these videos. You got to be very careful. These cars should not be left running without your foot on the brake. And if I remember correctly, it is running here. And that's a key thing, because this Lincoln, as well as other Ford products, they they are known to kind of, quote, fall into reverse. And that's just the way the steering columns are unless they're rebuilt. And these cars can fall or, quote, jump into reverse and take off and hit whatever's behind it. So, again, I know some people get sick of me saying that, but it's really an important thing. The good thing is Bring a Trailer gets the gentleman to do this video, okay? Shows the windows are operating, the vent windows, the front, the rear, and the top, okay? Now, we do not see in this video if the rear auto drops work. That is not a deal breaker, in my opinion. But, you would want to ask that question, because if you wanted those to work, that would, of course, be a key item. If we take a look at the car in general, again, I think from the looks of this car, it looks great. The bright work looks nice. It's 61. It's very sought after year. We know in 61, you've got the keyhole cover here. So that's specific to 61. Very early 62's got that as well. So that's a cool thing. And of course, we've got the Lincoln Star in the hubcap, aka wheel cover, which is fantastic. You got the rear pattern that matches very much so the front. That's distinctive 61. And of course, you've got the rear antenna, which so many people, including myself, do love. There are actually 3 different mirrors in 61. I haven't went down a huge bunny trail on that, but basically this is a mirror that you will often see, which I just refer to as the round mirror. Again, this, especially in this beautiful setting here in Vermont, I mean, who wouldn't want to just jump in this car and cruise? I think it looks really nice. Again, love the different photos here kind of showing the bright work. This is a car, though, I would want to see in person. There's sometimes, you can kind of tell from a car, and being that this car was repainted and things like that, I would want to see, depending on how well it was taken care of over the course of 60 years, how does this car look underneath? There's only a couple photos, so that's a key thing. It's hard to tell in here if there's been, any body filler. It doesn't look like it from these photos. I'm always curious when people respray these cars, how much do they take apart? Do they just tape things up, or do they take trim off and whatnot? We can see the spacing here is a little tight, and that's stuff that can be adjusted typically as long as the bumpers haven't been tweaked at all. Speaking of tweaked, we could see the Continental scripting, as I mentioned in my 61 video, as well as 62, where I talk about the outside aesthetics of these cars. The 61 has a distinctive script. However, you can see this L has been tweaked. And we know that because if you look at the passenger side, this is the way the L, it's the longer L that does change in 62. And that was primarily because people were getting, from what I understand, getting kind of cloths and things like that caught and breaking this little L, the longer L, if you will. And a lot of this information has come from Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land, so I appreciate his friendship. You can see here with the window down, of course, this is, there's no B-pillar on these convertibles, which is fantastic, as you would imagine on a convertible. Again, the fabric, things like that are not 100% factory correct. Again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. To me, this person put what they wanted into it, and you can see a little bit of discoloration with the original panel possibly and some of these replacement pieces, but this would be a good car if you wanted to redo the whole interior with like a Jim Wallace kit or something to that effect. From an interior perspective, we do have the kick panels, and the CD player is mounted underneath, so that could easily be removed. A lot of times now you don't even need that because of wireless. You can get kind of a Bluetooth amp or a Bluetooth little controller and hook that into your sound system. And you really, unless you are like me and you still have CDs, you really don't need those. In 61, I always get confused on this. I can't remember if the only option was the manual vent window. I think it became an option in 62. It's either early or late 62, but that's kind of a cool thing. That's one less thing that you have to worry about in terms of going wrong on these cars, if that makes sense. Love the interiors in these. It's just so cool how they have, the ignition is on the left side. You can see these little rings here. They're brown. Those are all there. Those are kind of what Tony and I call unicorn parts. They're getting harder to find because they sometimes will fall off and people just discard them, but it's neat to see all those there. Kind of a weird kick pod, I would probably change these out. There's a couple vendors that are making kick pods now a little bit more stealth, if that makes sense. You could see now, when I first looked at the carpet, I didn't think that the carpet was factory correct. You guys could kind of chime in. Now, either way, it is kind of dingy, but if it's not factory correct, someone did put the heel pad in here. It may very well, but I think when I first saw it, it didn't look factory correct. But either way, it's something that needs to be changed, I think, down the road to make this car look a lot nicer. There's a guy, Jim Wallace, in Florida that makes the best kits in the world. I've got no direct connection to him, but carpet kits, the tops, the seat kits, he makes all that. So if you ever need his information, email me, lincolnaddictpodcast@gmail.com. Up underneath here, you can kind of see the trunk looks a little bit dingy, but that's how these often look. The key thing is they've spent the money and did the rams, the cylinders, all the lines. All of that has been upgraded, which is fantastic. The motor in the earlier Lincoln convertibles is on the driver's side. That does switch to the passenger side a little bit further down the line, but the motor is over on this side for the flapper. That's key for those that don't know, that when this flapper comes up and the top is in the trunk, when this comes down, the flapper covers the area where the top is coming out right now. So that's what we refer to as the flapper. We could see here, the thing that doesn't seem right is if this is an AC car, I believe it should have the full fan shroud. And I don't know what's going on here over the course of time, but depending on where you live with the climate and how warm these engine bays get, I would certainly want to put a full shroud in here. And that'll just keep the car cool. Because again, you can see where the headers are, and any Lincoln owner will tell you with these big block engines, these engine bays absolutely get hot. So you would want to definitely have a full shroud in here. We can see a few of the hardware pieces have been discarded over the course of time, and you end up with these stainless bolts and this little plastic thing in the middle. Not deal breakers, but again, this car isn't going to maybe tickle the fancy of someone that's looking for 100% correct car. But again, not beating a dead horse. It just is what it is. Up underneath the car, the front end looks clean by most standards. You've got a little bit of oil residue and whatnot, but these cars, as I've said before, are not typically in perfect shape. Now, it's hard to say here if anything has been done underneath the car. I look at some of these kind of welds and whatnot, and I would like for you guys to chime in. I mean, I think the floor pans over here would be worse off if it's had a lot of work done. I don't own a 61, so it's kind of hard to tell if all of this is factory in here, or if someone's come in here with a little bit of a channel and spot welded it. I'd like for you guys to chime in to let me know what you think. From what we could see over here, the floor pans, there's a little bit of grittiness right here where, it could be kind of coming through if you put your finger or a screwdriver. The good thing is you can have the floor pans redone if you need to. I need to do them in my 64, but for someone that wants a car that's kind of been in a garage and untouched, this may not be the car for you. Again, the same from the other side. This floor pan looks pretty good. It's hard to kind of tell right here. I want to say it looks like a little channel because you can see, a little bit of stuff going on here, but it's hard to tell, to be totally honest with you. You've got the manual, you've got receipts, which I talk about is really key because it really shows a lot of what's been done. And one of the key things that's been done is they've replaced all the convertible top and trunk lines and whatnot. That is important because in the earlier 60s, they came with brake fluid, believe it or not, in the system. And the key thing there is what John Cashman always reinforced to me is that when you do the full upgrade on these cars and you do the rams, the cylinders, the lines and everything, the earlier year Lincolns, when you do all that, you end up putting the Type F fluid in there. And hopefully that's what they've done. And that's where you want to be with the Type F fluid. The earlier ones with the brake fluid, that all gets upgraded. So if you start changing one part at a time, it's kind of hard to want to switch over. But when you've done the full flush and everything is out and everything is brand new, that's the time to put the Type F fluid in. Now, there is one photo I wanted to show, and hopefully I could find it here. It's a key thing where I was talking to my buddy Tony that works on these Lincolns all the time down here in the Tampa Bay area. And the upper back panel switch, it looks like, okay, so this is where I wanted to get to. So you can see the new lines, the new pump, the rams, the cylinders are all redone. Now this here is a micro switch, it looks like, and they changed this out on the upper back panel switch. It's pretty ingenious, and a lot of people have to just work with what they have. This, of course, isn't factory correct, but people have figured out a little bit better way to do the upper back panel switch. There's a couple people on eBay that sell a part that plugs into the factory wiring, but this here is obviously not factory, and someone has made it work, and we know that because of the video. It's working well, so it's a little bit easier to adjust than the factory, what we call the hockey puck. And John Cashman can tell you all about that kind of stuff. All right, so I've rattled on a lot. My apologies. I just love talking about these cars. You know, it's hard to say if we look at the evaluation tool, really, this car is easily in good condition. It's hard to tell underneath the car. I wouldn't necessarily say excellent condition. I could see it going over 68,000, but I think the few things that I would want to find out are, do the rear auto drops work? Not necessarily a deal breaker. Does it just have a keyed ignition electronic fuel pump? And maybe a few more photos up underneath the deck lid, up underneath the hood, to see if there's any of that normal moisture capture that causes some of the rusting issues underneath there. And then maybe a few more photos underneath it. If I could, I would try to get someone to go look at this car and give me a good assessment. That way, if I'm spending a good chunk of change on it, I know I'm getting something that I can get in and cruise with my family safely, or something that you can restore potentially and change the color and do all the stuff you want to do to it. With that being said, let me know what you think. And again, thank you to all of the support. I certainly appreciate it. Stay on the rise. ODB, we out of here.